And now, Rorschach, the gripping story of a big city cop who wages an endless struggle to find crime wherever he looks for it. As our scene opens today, Lieutenant Rorschach is in the interrogation room grilling a suspect.
It's not going to do you any good to lie to me. I can tell by that look in your stupid face you've got the information. Now, if you want to get out of here in one piece, let's have it.
Okay, Rorschach, you win. You got a call while you were out to dinner to work on a new case. But I wish you wouldn't rough me up like this every night just to get your phone messages. I'm your commanding officer.
Never mind that now, Captain. Just give me what you've got quick.
Well, it's nothing big, really. Some woman called in and said her dog was lost.
Oh, I get the picture. Probably old lady Haroon and that band of roving dog walkers up on East 33rd. I've seen their M.O. before. Steinberg, Lopez, Caruso, get in here in the double.
You right.
Yeah, come, sir. Yeah, right. All right, Captain, let's have all the details, and don't try to hold anything back. I'll find out sooner or later.
Well, there's not much to tell, Rorschach. The woman just lost her dog. She said it was named Muggsy or Mopsy, something like that. The woman thought she saw a strange blue car in the neighborhood a little earlier, but she's not sure.
Okay, Steinberg, I want a rundown on every dog in New York whose name begins with the letter M. Lopez, run a check through motor vehicles on strange blue cars. Who owns them, where they are now, the works. And Caruso, I want you to set up a command post to seal off all the bridges and tunnels leading out of Manhattan Island. Nobody goes in or out beginning right now, okay? Get moving.
Yeah, all right, sir. Yeah, right, okay.
Now, what I want you to do, Captain, is get men to the airports, bus stations, and rail terminals. Somebody may be trying to ship a dog out of the city, and you know what that means.
Yeah? You want me to call in everybody who's off duty to work overtime again? Well, hand me the phone book.
That's odd. My phone book's gone. I know it was right here on this desk at 6:12 because I double-checked. Steinberg, Lopez, Caruso, move it in here.
Come on, Chief.
Yeah, right, sir. All right, get this, all of you. Steinberg, I want you to dust every phone book in the city for fingerprints. If you find one with mine on it, move in fast. Lopez, seal this building and conduct an office-to-office search. Any office with more than one phone book in it, report to me. Caruso, you take the airports, bus stations, rail terminals. If you see anybody with a heavy bundle, shoot to kill. Now, let's move on it.
Good. Yeah, okay, sir. Yeah, right.
Oh, sir. You got a little salsa, Captain? My stomach's acting up.
Maybe what you need is a little time off, Rorschach. I mean, well, you know, a lost dog's a minor thing, and a missing phone book is really nothing at all, so...
Nothing at all? Grand theft is nothing at all? Listen, I've been on this force 27 years. I know the pattern. Today it's only a phone book, but then it grows. Appliances vanish. Every car in New York disappears. Fuzzy-cheeked kids are hijacking ships at all the docks on the river. I've seen it happen. Took us a long time to get this town cleaned up, and I'm not going to let you or anybody else stand in my way of keeping it clean. You got that?
Sure. Incidentally, when you stood up there, I noticed that you'd been sitting on your phone book.
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
And so, without fear, without glamour, and without taking time to think what he's doing, Rorschach battles to snuff out crime before it exists. Join us again soon for more real-life police drama on the next episode of Rorschach. Views behind the people, behind the news. And with me right now is the learned Mr. Hubert C. Waxford, prepared to shed light on one of the great problems of our time. Mr. Waxford is the chairman of the Farsighted Planners for Urban Renewal. I assume, sir, that you call yourselves Farsighted Planners because your members all wear thick spectacles like those you have on? Is that how...
No, that's not correct at all, Mr. Elliott. Actually, I'm very nearsighted, but my urban planning is farsighted.
I understand you've put forth a number of new theories on urban renewal from your office in Washington. Tell us about some of them, will you?
Currently, I'm putting forth new theories from my home in Elkton, Maryland. I did have an office in Washington, but it was torn down on the recommendation of another urban renewal planner.
Well, in any event...
I'll get him for that. It's the last thing I ever do. He turned my office into a parking lot for his office.
Okay, well, now, I've heard urban renewal creates some innocent victims, and I guess you happen to be one of them.
Urban renewal does not need to create innocent victims, Mr. Elliott.
Well, that's good to hear.
I'm afraid our work has gotten that reputation because planners in many cities started out by tearing down the slums.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, slum dwellers are the ones who have the most trouble finding a new place to live. that they can afford.
Well, I can appreciate that. How can you renew an urban area without getting rid of the slums, though?
Oh, well, you do that eventually, but first, the modern, expensive apartment buildings should all be destroyed, and then low-cost public housing is put up to replace those, and, of course, that gives slum dwellers a place to move before you tear down the slums.
Well, that sounds like far-sighted urban planning, all right. What becomes of the people who live in those modern, expensive buildings that are the first to be torn down?
Well, my group isn't terribly concerned about what happens to them. They've got plenty of money, so they can move to another city or put their furniture in storage while they take a around-the-world cruise or something. There's a number of options open to them.
Yeah, I can see that now. Of course, there are other forms of urban blight besides substandard housing.
I might also mention that my group is concerned with other forms of urban blight besides substandard housing. Take old warehouses, for example.
I suppose you favor replacing them with new warehouses on the outskirts of cities to help cut down on truck traffic, right?
Well, no, I never considered that idea, but I'm sure that I would have rejected it if I had. You see, it's my theory that we don't need warehouses at all anymore. Most of the food we eat now is processed, so it won't spoil if it's piled up out in the sun in vacant lots.
Well, what happens to it when it rains?
Well, urban planners can't control the weather. I mean, if a city's located in a damp climate, there's not much anybody can do about that.
No, I guess it's foolish to expect you people to do the impossible.
That's right. For instance, I recently calculated that Tucson, Arizona could become a city of 1 million if it had a good harbor and the Pacific Ocean there, but would have to tear down San Diego and replace it with Tucson to do that. So I decided it's not practical.
Well, actually, you mentioned several proposals that don't sound too practical. Have you actually tried out any of these ideas of yours anywhere?
Yes, I utilized all of my plans for the complete urban renovation of Goldfield, Colorado.
That's one of those western ghost towns where nobody lives, isn't it?
At the present time, yes. However, I'm hoping that some of the people who had to move away when we tore all the buildings down may eventually come back. Now, if they do, they'll find that it's much better planned than it used to be.
Well, I'm sure that's true. And you've given us all a better understanding of how you improve communities by destroying them, Mr. Waxford.
Sure.
Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us today on this edition of Views Behind the Views, behind the people, behind the news. And now, the Rotman Corporation, maker of fine buggy whips for more than 9 centuries, presents The Orderlies, a dramatic behind-the-scenes glimpse of life in a big city hospital.
Orderly Wine Coop, report at once to Chief Orderly Schnellwell. Report to Chief Orderly Schnellwell.
Here I am, Chief Orderly Schnellwell. What's up?
Well, I hear your salary's up for one thing, Wine Coop, and I just wanted you to know that I had nothing to do with your receiving more money. I've always rated you consistently poor in your work performance reviews.
Well, I've never doubted that you'd be unswerving in your negative reports about me, Chief Orderly Schnellwell. And I understand that this is just a cost of living raise that's going to every member of the staff, so it still keeps me at the very bottom of the totem pole.
I'm glad you understand that, Wine Coop. I certainly wouldn't want you to think that you deserve an extra 3 cents an hour just for lolling around, displaying your incompetence.
Well, of course, I do run up and down stairs displaying my incompetence on all 16 floors of the hospital, sir. Even so, my basic wage of $1.75 an hour is more than generous, and this 3-cent raise is just like found money.
I wouldn't start making any plans for spending that salary increase if I were you, Wine Coop.
Well, does this mean that you thought up some diabolical scheme for getting it away from me, sir?
It's not a scheme, Wine Coop, and it's definitely for your own protection. I've checked the files and noticed that you're not covered by malpractice insurance.
Well, that's true, Your Excellency, but how could I ever commit malpractice? I'm only an associate orderly, 3rd class, formerly making $1.75 an hour, recently raised to $1.78.
I'm aware of your rank and classification, Wine Coop. However, a new directive has just come through that makes a change in hospital policy. As you know, our beloved surgeons have been paying a great deal of money for malpractice insurance, and now we're hoping to get the premium rates reduced by having some of the larger malpractice cases filed against orderlies instead of doctors.
Well, I can see how the doctors would welcome that arrangement, Your Highness, but why would patients ever file malpractice suits against an orderly?
Because you're going to start telling the patients it's your fault when things go wrong, Wine Coop. says so right here in this new directive.
Yeah, I was kind of afraid that's what it said, Chief Orderly Schnellwell.
Don't be sullen about it, Winecoop. For personnel in your low category, malpractice insurance will cost less than $500 a year. And, of course, your recent wage increase covers almost $65 of that.
Yeah, but I can't come up with the rest, sir. I'll starve.
Nonsense, Winecoop. Malpractice insurance is tax-deductible.
Well, that's something, I guess. But I don't pay much tax anyway. The government considers me a chronic underachiever. In fact, I was living on day-old pumpernickel and root beer that comes in bent cans even before you started taking $500 a year away from me.
Winecoop, please don't say that I'm the one taking money away from you. This policy change was voted by the Board of Surgeons, and I understand the vote was unanimous.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that, sir. And to think I've been whimpering about doing my part after the matter was thoughtfully considered by the Board of Surgeons and then passed unanimously. I just don't know what gets into me, Chief Orderly Schnellwell. Here I am challenging the wisdom of the surgeons for my own selfish purposes. I'm so ashamed.
There, Winecoop. Your words of insubordination don't need to leave this room necessarily.
I think I get your message, Chief Orderly Schnellwell, and you can certainly put me down as being among the first to sign up for Orderly's malpractice insurance. I can cover part of the premium by selling the bicycle I ride to work, and I've got some gold in my teeth that might pay the rest of it.
I'm beginning to admire your team spirit, Winecoop. And I have a feeling that the day may soon come when I'll be proud to call you a colleague.
And so underpaid, undertrained, and overbearing, the hospital orderly marches on in the name of medical science. Join us again soon when the Rotman Corporation, maker of fine buggy whips for more than 9 centuries, will present another dramatic episode of The Orderlies.
And right now, we have another interesting session with Mr. Ralph Flinger, the man who's better known as Mr. I Know Where They Are. Ralph has made a lifetime career of keeping track of thousands of former celebrities who are no longer in the public limelight. And I'm sure it's a rewarding experience for you to hear from these old-timers all around the world, Ralph.
Yes, it certainly is, Ray. I received a postcard just this morning from Torchy Yachov, once known as the Wild Bulgarian of six-day bike racing. Torchy wrote he's living with his daughter and son-in-law now over in Patterson, New Jersey, and he grows a lot of hollyhocks.
Well, that's a warm and touching bit of news, Ralph. But now we have a lot of mail from our listeners that's piled up here since your last visit. Most everyone wants to know about their favorite old-time celebrities who have vanished from the spotlight.
Well, I'll be glad to supply any information I have about them, Ray, if I possibly can.
Now, do you need a handkerchief or anything?
No, I don't.
All right. Here's a very interesting letter from a lady in Maine. She says that her grandfather took her to aerial stunt shows many years ago, and she remembers seeing a young daredevil named Warner Bromley, who flew a Zeppelin upside down. She wonders if you know where he is now.
Oh, yes, of course. Warner Bromley performed at air shows all over the country during the early 30s, and he even achieved international prominence when he tried to fly a Zeppelin upside down through the framework of the Eiffel Tower.
Well, he certainly sounds like a colorful figure. What's he doing at the present time?
Warner Bromley is still close to the type of work he always loved. He inflates weather balloons for the government now. He lives alone with his 2 Cocker Spaniels in a trailer park near Oklahoma City.
Well, that's good to hear. Now we have another letter from, it's from a gentleman in North Carolina. He's wondering whatever became of a former Major League Baseball player named Backwoods Grinnell.
Do you remember him? He brings back
just
memories.
Vaguely the name.
Backwoods Grinnell earned his nickname on opening day of the 1934 season when he hit a home run and ran around the bases backwards. No one ever knew for sure whether he just got confused or did it on purpose to win a bet from a teammate.
I see. Well,
either way, the commissioner ruled that he'd made a travesty of baseball and fined him $100,000, which was a good deal of money in those days.
Certainly was. But what became of Grinnell?
Well, of course, he dropped out of baseball right away rather than pay the fine, and he recently earned his 40-year service pin from a company in Ohio that makes steel wire for paper clips. Seems quite happy in that career. I hear he's just been promoted to chief custodian of the night shift.
Well, it's nice to know that some of these former celebrities have prospered in other occupations in later life. Now, Ralph, we have time for just about one more letter addressed to Mr. I Know Where They Are. It's from a lady in Montana, and she wants to know whatever happened to Lola Dressendorfer, the young heiress who mysteriously vanished around the time of World War II.
Actually, it was right after the war, in 1946, that Lola disappeared. She was in her early 20s then, and of course, it was assumed she'd been kidnapped from the Dressendorfer estate in Connecticut. But no ransom note was ever received. The police never found a trace of the woman.
Oh, that's tragic, Ralph. Of course, it means that no one knows what became of Lola Dressendorfer.
No, it just means the police never found a trace of her, Ray. I happened to run across Lola several years ago, but I was getting some information together on Doodles Rushkin, another young heiress of that same period. Doodles told me that I might find Lola Dressendorfer working as a manicurist right here in New York, and sure enough she was.
Well, then a disappearance almost 30 years ago must have been voluntary.
Yes, it was. Lola wanted to marry the captain of a ferry boat somewhere out in the Midwest, but her wealthy parents disapproved. She just decided to vanish.
Well, that's an amazing story.
Yes, it is. Unfortunately, her fiancé, the ferry boat captain, couldn't find her either. That's why she had to go to work as a manicurist. But she seems reconciled to her life the way it is now.
Well, I'm happy to hear that, and I want to thank you, Ralph Flinger, Mr. I Know Where They Are, for helping our listeners locate some of their favorite celebrities of yesteryear.
It's my pleasure, Ray. Goodbye to you and all of your radio friends.
And once again, it's time for Grand Motel, a speck of a place, a heck of a place on Route 14 near Hadleyville, where the mountains reach the sky and living is easy as pie. In today's episode, our action begins with uncompromising owner Leonard Humphrey directing a newly arrived guest to his suite in Grand Motel.
Yeah, I'm putting you in Unit 5, mister. You just park your machine over under that sycamore and you won't have far to carry your baggage.
Well, I don't usually have to carry my own stuff in other places where I stay, Mr. What's your name anyway?
Humphrey, Leonard Humphrey.
Well, I guess that's okay. But as I was telling you, Humphrey, Leonard Humphrey, I don't usually have to...
My name is just Leonard Humphrey. Only one Humphrey in it.
Well, then I don't know why you told me there were two. Anyway, if you'll stop interrupting for a minute, I wanted to say that other motel owners unpacked my car for me, carry the suitcases into the room.
Well, I guess I could do that. You sure can't afford to lose your business.
Fine, come on, I'll open the car trunk for you. I've got quite a few sample cases in there I want you to carry into the room.
Well, if you'd park your machine over under that sycamore, it wouldn't be so far to carry things.
No, that's okay, I don't mind.
Well, sure a lot of luggage there. Really got the back end of your car weighted down. What kind of samples you carry with you?
I sell bricks. Naturally, I have to carry several styles of your natural red building brick, your round-cornered paving brick, your light-colored adobe. Adobe's getting very popular.
Yeah, I don't know why you need them all carried in. But we can't afford to lose your business, so I'll just...
Wait a minute, Daddy. Don't you lift those heavy things till I get there.
That's all right, Naomi. I'm fine.
Who's the good-looking chick?
She's my daughter.
Oh, I guess that's okay. Have you got any ice around here?
Well, there's,
Daddy, I'm so glad you've talked this gentleman into staying. We can use the money to have our billboard out on the highway lighted.
Oh, Naomi, that can wait. You need a nice new dress.
Hey, Humphrey, you never answered my question.
Well, there's an ice chest out behind you.
Not that question. I asked who's the good-looking chick is here.
She's my daughter.
Okay. So, which one of you wants to get me some ice?
Well, it's right behind unit number 9. We usually let our guests help themselves.
Daddy, my stars, don't offend the man. We need his business.
Yeah, all right, Naomi. I'm sorry.
Hey, Humphrey, you still didn't answer my question.
She's my daughter.
No, you already answered that one. I asked, which one of you wants to get me some ice?
Well, I will.
No, I will, Daddy. You stay here.
No, that's all right, Naomi. I will.
Look, if you two squabble like this about everything, you could keep me awake all night. The man in my line of work needs his rest. I'd better look for a room someplace else. So long.
Well, I'm sorry, Naomi. I guess I failed you again.
Can Leonard Humphrey remain uncompromising and hope to succeed in the motel business? Will lighting his billboard on the highway really solve the problem? Perhaps we'll learn more next time when another weary traveler pulls up to Grand Motel.
Well, hi there, boys and girls. It's time for the Charlie Chipmunk Club to come to order. And here to read another exciting Charlie Chipmunk story is your old friend, Uncle Edgar.
Thank you, Bob, and hello, boys and girls. And for today's story, I want you all to turn to page 22 of this month's issue of the Charlie Chipmunk Club magazine. And there at the top, you'll see...
I certainly hope you boys and girls haven't forgotten to send in your subscription for the Charlie Chipmunk Club magazine. 12 big issues delivered to your home for only $8.95. Uncle Edgar?
Thank you. Now, there in the first panel, kids, we see that it's lunchtime at the tiny school for little forest creatures, and Charlie Chipmunk is telling all his friends about the trip he's going to make to visit his grandmother Chipmunk in the city.
Now, be sure to notice, boys and girls, that all the little creatures have brought their lunches to school in genuine Charlie Chipmunk lunch boxes. They're made of handsome, thin-gauge steel. Each comes with its own Charlie Chipmunk thermos bottle. Only $6.98 at better drug and variety stores. And now back to Uncle Edgar.
Now, in the next panel, we see that Charlie Chipmunk is at home packing his suitcase for that trip to Grandmother Chipmunk's.
Of course, that's an official Charlie Chipmunk suitcase gang, strong vinyl two-suiter in authentic chipmunk brown with black stripes. The price, remarkably low, $69.50. Uncle Edgar?
Bob, I kind of wish you'd stop horning in this way. We're never going to get this story finished unless you clam up.
Well, it's all those wonderful commercial sponsors who keep us on the air, Uncle Edgar. I think you and the boys and girls should bear that in mind.
Okay. Well, we're up to the third panel, kids. And we can see that it's raining hard as Charlie Chipmunk sets out on his journey. See those big puddles? And Charlie with his raincoat and umbrella.
Authentic Charlie Chipmunk foul weather gear gang. A heavy-duty slicker, umbrella, and galoshes, all with the official Charlie Chipmunk emblem, and all for only $26.50. Tell Mommy to get yours tomorrow.
Look, I'm not going to hold still for this. We're only supposed to have a commercial at the beginning and the end. I don't think federal regulations even allow as much advertising as you're throwing in here. I mean, every 2 minutes, every 2 seconds.
Call these public service announcements rather than commercials, Uncle Edgar. And if you'd stop calling attention to them, everything would be fine.
But I'm only up to the fourth panel of the story here. We've been on the air for minutes.
You're stopping to complain so much. I'm surprised you've gotten this far, actually. Now, just go ahead.
Okay, I'll try. Now, boys and girls, we can see Charlie Chipmunk holding his little suitcase as he waits on the corner for the bus to come and take him to Grandmother Chipmunk's.
And, of course, we all know what kind of bus he's waiting for, don't we, gang?
Oh, you bet we do.
It's a genuine Charlie Chipmunk double-decker. Plenty of room inside for you and 71 of your little friends. Diesel-powered, air-conditioned, and yet it costs a surprisingly low $52,500. Best of all, your local Charlie Chipmunk dealer will arrange easy payment terms to fit your daddy's income.
Hurrying right along here, boys and girls, we now see Charlie Chipmunk arriving in the big city. And there's Grandmother Chipmunk.
Oh, sorry, Uncle Edgar. It looks as if our time is about up for today.
I knew this would happen. I've never finished a story on this show yet, and I want you to know that somebody in authority is going to hear about it.
Sure to join us for lots more fun at the next meeting of the Charlie Chipmunk Club, boys and girls.
Well, first, I plan to tell the station manager all about you, and if he won't do anything, I'll go straight to the Federal Communications Commission.
Say goodbye to the boys and girls, will you?
Goodbye.
And now, Jungle Haven, the last roadside zoo still operating on Interstate 5 with real raccoons, invites you to join us for more thrilling action in the life of Blimix.
My name's Joe Blimix. I'm a private investigator. The other night, I got tied up late at the office, trying to decide whether I looked cuter wearing sunglasses or just keeping them perched on top of my head. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, so I did the only thing I could. I said, "Who is it?"
Telegram for Joe Blimix. All about your beautiful blonde secretary and how she's had an accident. Needs you to come right away. Things like that.
Okay, wait just a second. Look, pal, I'm not sure what you're up to, but I don't even have a secretary.
That's okay. I don't really have a telegram.
Well, I guess that clears up the mystery then.
Well, not entirely. You still don't know who I am.
Well, that's a good point. Who are you, anyway?
Name is Bullets Culhane. Here's my business card. I'll give you something to read while I step inside and prepare to beat the daylights out of you.
Say, Bullets W. Culhane, killings on contract, merciless pummelings, general goon squad operations. I'm not sure I like the looks of this card.
Well, frankly, I'm not too crazy about it myself. I told the printer to use Bodoni type instead of Old English because I thought it would look more masculine, but he loused up the job. I guess you can't expect much from a print shop that's really a front for a stolen car ring.
Oh, I don't know. My Bob is really the top man in a policy racket, but he really does a beautiful job of getting this one lock of hair to hang down on my forehead.
Yeah, it's cute as the dickens, all right. I'm really sorry I'm going to have to spoil your face, but business is business.
I can't argue with that. But do you mind if I ask you who you're working for?
I'm sorry. They asked me not to tell. I guess they thought it would make them look bad if word leaked out that I'm only getting paid $500 for this assignment. But then I didn't take the job for the money. I just happen to enjoy beating up private eyes like you.
Well, I think enjoying your work is always the most important thing. Money can't buy happiness.
That's what I always say, too. You know, we got a lot in common. Only difference is I'm still going to be healthy 5 minutes from now, and you're not. So would you just stand there quietly with your hands at your sides so I can get a good whack at you?
How's this? Leaning against the desk with one foot just slightly in front of the other?
Yeah, that's real nice. Just hold it and take that. Okay, there we are. I don't usually turn a guy into that much of a mess for only $500, but as I say, I really enjoyed this job. Good night.
After he left, I just lay there with my head stuffed into the bottom shelf of the bookcase, trying to figure things out. At first, I thought he might have some connection with the Whitford case, since that's the only one I'm working on. But old man Whitford never mentioned knowing a mobster named Bullets Culhane. And besides, the Whitfords are millionaires. And Culhane had made a point of telling me he had his business cards printed at a cheap place that used the wrong kind of type. It just didn't add up. So I decided not to bother making a note of the incident in my files, the files of Joe Blimix, private investigator. And now we invite you to journey with us through space and time to the distant future for another strange story from
The Galaxy of the Baboons.
And for our latest weird adventure, we must move through a time warp to the year 6128. A superior race of monkeys has taken over the universe, and as a hot sun burns down on the barren landscape, we see one of the creatures loping into his dwelling place.
Well, thank heaven that's done, Margaret.
Did you have trouble getting our pet human to the kennel, Harold?
Of course I had trouble. Always have trouble with that confounded human. Trying to drive with him climbing all over the car and licking my face. It's a wonder I didn't have an accident.
Well, I'm sorry. I guess I should have gone along, but I was hoping he'd behave himself.
What?
I said I should have gone along, but I just have so much packing for our vacation yet to do.
That didn't sound like what you said the first time.
Well, it's not important.
Sometimes I think getting ready for a vacation is more trouble than it's worth. Just get out on the highway, bumper to bumper with a million other monkeys.
Well, I hope you won't get so upset this year every time you get caught behind a big truck.
That's the rude gorillas that drive those things that bug me. They ought to be hanging from a tree by their tails.
Harold, a gorilla doesn't have a tail any more than you do. I just wish you weren't so prejudiced against everybody who's not a baboon.
What?
I said you're prejudiced. You should understand that gorillas are apes just like we are.
That didn't sound like what you said the first time.
Well, it's the same thing.
What?
Oh, for heaven's sakes, Harold, will you stop saying what and go upstairs and finish packing?
That didn't sound like what you said the first time.
Well, never mind what I said the first time. My stars, we'll never make it to the city before dark if we don't get going. You always say you hate to drive at night.
Well, it's those humans darting across the road in the dark that bother me. I don't know why their owners can't keep them fenced up.
Well, I doubt if the ones you see on the road belong to anybody. They aren't wearing collars or license tags.
What?
They aren't domestic. They're just running wild.
That didn't sound like what you said the first time.
And so we journey back across the endless reaches of space and time to our own world as we know it. But soon, we'll be making another fantastic voyage into the future when we'll hear Harold say,
$24 for this room that doesn't even have color television.
That's in the next strange episode of
The Galaxy of the Baboons.
As a public service paid for by the National Foundation to Improve Things, we invite you now to spend another educational session with the idol of the nation's youngsters, Mr. Science. And as we look in on the laboratory today, we see that little Jimmy Schwab is just arriving to watch Mr. Science perform his latest fascinating experiment.
Well, hello there, Jimmy. You're right on time to watch me perform my latest fascinating experiment.
Gosh, all hemlock, Mr. Science. What fascinating experiment are you going to perform today?
Well, I'm sure you'll remember from last time we were discussing Archimedes' principle, and I promised to demonstrate it for you.
Holy cow, Mr. Science. I don't remember anything about that at all.
Well, that's all right, Jimmy.
The doctors have told my parents that I'll probably never be able to remember anything for as long as a week.
Well, Archimedes' principle only takes a moment to review. It states that a body immersed in water will only sink until it has displaced the amount of liquid that's equal to its own mass and density. Now do you understand, Jimmy?
Gee, Willikers, I don't think so. And even if I do, I can't remember it for a week.
Well, I'm sure after you've observed today's experiment, it'll be fixed more firmly in your mind. Now, to prove Archimedes' principle, we first must fill this bucket with liquid.
Crime and Nettles, Mr. Science, that liquid looks exactly like the stuff we get in our bathtub at home when we turn on the faucet.
Well, that's just could be, Jimmy, because the bucket now contains ordinary household water.
Household water? Great day in the morning. Wait till I tell the kids at school I've seen some of that.
Now, let's try to keep yourself under control, son. I know this is a big thrill for you, but the best part is still to come. Now, I'm going to toss this rock into the bucket of water, and you watch carefully what happens.
Holy Moses, Mr. Science, it went clear to the bottom underneath all the liquid.
Exactly. And do you know why?
Golly, no. I never expected that to happen.
Well, just remember what we said about Archimedes' principle. You see, the rock was heavier than the water, and that's why it sank in an effort to displace its own mass and density.
Great suffering catfish. It's like the wonders of the universe were unfolding before my very eyes.
Well, that's very well put, Jimmy. Now, to complete our experiment, I'll place this wooden toothpick in the same bucket of water.
Boy, oh boy, look at that. It's not sinking in an effort to displace its own mass and density. So Archimedes was wrong, huh?
No, not at all, Jimmy. You see, wood is lighter than water.
Even a whole tree full of it?
Yes, in proportion to its size. That's why wood always floats. And it's our way of proving by a simple experiment here in the laboratory that Archimedes' principle is correct.
Jiminy, gee, that was a wonderful experiment, Mr. Science. Can I toss this box into the bucket and see if it floats too?
No. Leave that alone. It contains the ingredients for next week's experiment. Don't touch it, boy.
But I only want to toss it in like this and
I'd
see
rather
if...
you...
Mr. Science has been brought to you as a public service, paid for by the National Foundation to Improve Things. Today's broadcast was the last in our current series. And now, the Intermountain Baby Food Cartel, the world's largest packager of mushed-up vegetables for your little one, presents another session of courtroom drama starring Lupus Bartlow, Counselor at Law. As our scene opens today, Lupus Bartlow is trying to gain acquittal for his lovely client, Marlowe Binklow. Marlowe stands accused of murdering his or her ne'er-do-well husband, Harlow Binklow. Lupus Bartlow remains convinced of her innocence. Still, the prosecution has built a strong case, and the outcome remains in doubt as Lupus Bartlow confers in the courtroom with his boyish associate, Todd Burklow.
I'm afraid the outcome of this case remains in doubt, Todd. I'm convinced of Marlowe's innocence, but I can't prove that she was incapable of committing the crime unless I put her on the stand.
Well, it seems risky, Lupus. The prosecutor will certainly try to tear down her alibi on cross-examination.
Yes, but it won't do him any good. With Marlowe's testimony, I can prove that she could never have killed her husband. Your Honor, the defense calls Marlowe Binklow to the stand.
Marlowe Binklow to the stand.
You swear to tell the truth, so help you?
Yes, I do.
Now, Mrs. Binklow, the prosecution is making the ridiculous charge that it was you who shot your husband with a large double-barrel shotgun on the night of November 14th. But isn't it true that you were actually visiting relatives in a distant city on that date?
Well, the city isn't terribly distant. I suppose I could easily have driven home and shot Harlow and then driven back before anybody missed me.
Yes, in theory, I suppose that might be possible. But, of course, your husband's guns were all in a locked case, and you didn't have the key.
Objection! That hasn't been established.
Overruled.
Oh, for crying out loud.
Apparently, my learned colleague is upset about that evidence, so let's clarify it for him, Mrs. Binklow. Isn't it true that you had no key to the case while your husband kept his guns?
Yes, that's true. Of course, the murder weapon was too large to fit into the case, so Harlow just kept it leaning against the wall in his den.
Very good. You've raised an important point there, Mrs. Binklow. You're a rather small woman, and yet you say the murder weapon was large and heavy. I doubt that you could even lift it.
Well, I used to pick it up to dust under it, if that's what you mean.
No, that's not what I mean, Mrs. Binklow. I'm speaking of a tiny person like yourself raising a large shotgun clear to her shoulder and then firing it.
Well, the jury would just have to make a guess on whether I could do that.
Not necessarily. I have here Exhibit A, which has been identified as the murder weapon. Now, Mrs. Binklow, I want you to step down here and try as hard as you can to lift this weapon to your shoulder.
You mean like this?
Yes, but you're having trouble holding it steady, even with both hands. Yet you'd need one hand free to pull the trigger.
Well, I've seen Harlow brace himself like this, and then that puts your trigger finger here, and then he,
Well, maybe it is remotely possible, but that doesn't mean it happened. Your Honor, no more witnesses. The defense rests.
And so once again, justice prevails, thanks to the shrewdness and the cunning of the experienced defense attorney. Join us again soon when the Intermountain Baby Food Cartel, the world's largest packager of mushed-up vegetables for your little one, will present more courtroom drama starring Lupus Bartlow, counselor at law. And now, the Monongahela Metal Foundry, maker of extra shiny steel ingots for home and office use, invites you to ride with the men of Squad Car 119.
My name's Sam Finch. Me and my partner, Ralph R. Kruger, Jr., we're the unsung heroes of the police force. We ride a prowl car at night. Sometimes we go around corners, sometimes straight ahead. Either way, we keep on the lookout for trouble. The other evening, I just pulled the squad car over to the curb, shut off the engine when my partner, Ralph R. Kruger, Jr., turned to me and said,
Why'd you pull over to the curb and shut off the engine, Sam?
kind of quiet tonight, so I thought we might catch a little nap before we have to check in with headquarters.
Gee, I can't sleep when it's this hot and humid, Sam. My shirt sticks to me, and I get too uncomfortable to doze off.
Yeah, well, why don't you just lean back and rest your eyes then, Ralph, Jr.?
No, that's no good. Leaning back just makes my shirt stick to the car seat, and that's even worse.
Yeah, that's too bad. I think I could really doze off if you'd just pipe down, Ralph
Oh,
R.
sorry,
Jr.
Sam. Never been able to relax in sticky clothes when it's hot and humid.
Yeah.
I don't even wear pajama tops until after Labor Day.
Yeah, well, when it's hot and humid like that.
Calling Car 119, Car 119. Investigate a man behaving suspiciously in the drugstore at Pico and Olympic. That's the drugstore at Pico and Olympic.
Ah, drugstore at Pico and Olympic, huh?
That's us, Sam. Let's roll.
Gee, look at that temperature gauge, Ralph R. Jr. It's almost up to boiling.
Must be a broken fan belt. I'd be willing to bet on it. Better turn off the engine and have a look, Sam.
Yeah. Maybe just registered hot because the water wasn't circulating while we were parked there.
No, I'd be willing to bet it's a broken fan belt. Careful now when you open the hood, Sam. The steam could come right up and hit you in the face.
Yeah. Doesn't seem to be boiling over. I'll lean in and check the fan belt.
Careful when you stick your head in there, Sam. You could bang it on the hood and get a nasty gash.
Yeah, fan belt's okay. Maybe we're just low on water.
Be careful if you plan to take off that radiator cap, Sam. Hot water could spill out all over your hands there.
Yeah, if it did, you could get a nasty burn.
Calling car 119, car 119. Disregard that call to investigate a man behaving suspiciously in the drugstore at Pico and Olympic. The case has been handled by the men of Squad Car 24. The suspect has been apprehended, booked, and brought to trial. In 1 minute, the results of that trial.
And while we wait to hear the outcome of today's exciting case, here's good news for you homemakers. You're well aware, I'm sure, that extra shiny steel ingots have been in short supply this season at your Monongahela Metal Foundry showroom. But now we're happy to say that supply is nearly caught up with the tremendous demand. Oh, you may still encounter a limit of 3 ingots to the customer in some scattered areas, but in most places, your Monongahela agent will be happy to sell you as many as you need to replace those old, worn-out ingots you've been forced to use during the shortage. So stock up today while there's a good selection.
The suspect arrested in that drugstore at Pico and Olympic was convicted on 5 counts of behaving suspiciously. Behaving suspiciously in a drugstore is punishable by a term in the state penitentiary of not less than 20 years or more than life.
And so another desperate criminal is brought to justice thanks to the unsung heroes of the police force, the men who ride the squad cars at night. As I'm sure most of you regular listeners know, we never shy away from controversy around here, and from time to time we like to keep you informed by giving our thoughtful opinions on some of the major issues of the day.
We feel it's our responsibility as prominent public figures and leading Americans to let you know what we think about things.
And so, at this time, we wish to present another in our continuing series, Bob and Ray Editorials.
We want to present our Bob and Ray editorial position right now on the number one issue facing our nation today. And, of course, that's the question of whether we should or should not dig up all the old broken sidewalks in our metropolitan areas and replace them with new ones.
To deliver this editorial, we've selected one of the leading authorities who agrees with our official Bob and Ray opinion on the subject. She is Mrs. Carlotta Weingraf, the chairperson of the group that calls itself SOS. Those initials, of course, stand for Save Old Sidewalks. So would you just go ahead and present your arguments, Mrs. Weingraf?
Yes, thank you. My fellow Americans, as we approach the last quarter of the 20th century...
Excuse me just a moment, Ms. Weingraf. I think we forgot to mention that the opinions you're expressing represent your own views, which also carry the endorsement of the far-flung Bob and Ray organization. However, they do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this station or its employees or members of their families.
Nor are they necessarily the opinion of our sponsors or their advertising agencies or children born out of wedlock to those advertising agencies. I guess that takes care of everybody.
I think so. However, it should be mentioned that this radio station, which may fail to share our editorial opinion, broadcasts on a standard frequency assigned to it by the Federal Communications Commission.
But not necessarily by members of the families of that commission.
So now, presenting the Bob and Ray editorial stand, here again is Mrs. Weingraf.
Thank you. As we approach the last quarter of the 20th century, it should be remembered that many old sidewalks bear the footprints of dogs, cats, and even human beings who stepped in the cement while it was still wet. These footprints are historically significant because those who made them are no longer with us, for the most part. Therefore, let us ask ourselves the pertinent question: are cracked and broken sidewalks the price we must pay to have history at our feet?
Thank you, Mrs. Weingraf. You've been listening to another Bob and Ray editorial opinion on one of the controversial issues of our time. Speaking on behalf of the Bob and Ray organization, Mrs. Carlotta Weingraf, chairperson of the Committee to Save Old Sidewalks.
We recognize our responsibility to give qualified persons with opposing views an opportunity to respond to this editorial on the air. Therefore, if you hold an opposing view and consider yourself a qualified person, you may apply in writing to our office for equal time.
But please confine your letters of application to 25 words or less. Letters of more than 25 words will not be considered. The opinion of our judges is final. In case of ties, duplicate awards of equal time will be made.
And remember, there's nothing to buy, no box tops to send in. However, we must request that you enclose a stamped, self-addressed envelope. Without that, we couldn't possibly.
And don't forget to include your zip code in that address, because zip codes speed the mail.
Right. So once again, the complete address to put on that self-addressed envelope is your name, your street number, the city where you live, And most important, your zip code.
In closing, we wish to state that the preceding editorial has been presented under the auspices of the Bob and Ray Public Affairs Department. Printed copies of this editorial are not available at any price, so please refrain from sending cash, check, or money order.
And don't call collect either. Just enclose your stamped, self-addressed envelope and let it go at that. Thank you.
You've been listening to another in a continuing series of Bob and Ray editorials. Portions of this program may have been on tape and might conceivably have been recorded earlier for broadcast in this time period. And hi, this is Sergeant Ben Royster and your Army Amateur Hour, coming to you from the good-looking grounds of the Fort Swanson Marine Base. And in keeping with the Marine tradition, I think our first amateur is a Marine. Step up and give us your name and rank, please.
Lieutenant Junior Grade Warren Dudley, U.S. Navy.
Well, welcome, Lieutenant. You're not retired, are you?
No, nothing like that. I've just been in a year or so.
Well, you'll find it's marvelous, Lieutenant. Now, what's the talent that you're going to bring to our microphones?
Well, I do a Scottish sword dance, Sergeant. I place a couple of swords on the ground and I dance around them.
Well, we've never had anything like that before, I don't think.
Does that mean you don't want me to do it?
No, go right ahead. It's your neck or feet. At any rate, Lieutenant Warren Grade in his version of a Scottish sword dance. Very good. Very good, Warren. And that should certainly make you eligible for the Drill Talent Award semifinals to be held in Staten Island next March.
Well, you're very kind, Sergeant.
You can leave now, Lieutenant, and go around the bandstand. I don't want you to track up the stage. And as I look at my card, I see our next contestant is a lovely miss from the Waves, Lieutenant Marjorie Avalier. Or is that Avalier?
Yes.
Lieutenant? It is.
The last contestant was a lieutenant, too. Maybe this is my lucky day.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, it was a coincidence and all like that. I mean, he's a lieutenant and so am I. So maybe this is my lucky day.
From what I've heard so far, Marjorie, you'll need all the lucky days you can get. But no offense meant.
Well, I'm not thin-skinned anyhow. I take most things with a grain of salt.
Well, you certainly sound self-reliant. Where are you stationed?
I'm a pre-sea office attendant attached to Ronkomapak, that's Southern Naval District, Pacific Fleet Temporary Headquarters of the Vice Admiral, San Diego, California.
Thank you for the information, Marjorie. And what talent did you bring with you today?
Well, I imitate a radio alarm clock starting up in the morning. About the only thing I can imitate with my own voice is the alarm clock, so I brought one with me. Is that all right?
Sure it is, Lieutenant. Can't expect too much of you anyway. So here she is, Lieutenant Marjorie Avalier, in an imitation of a radio alarm clock starting up in the morning.
Let me set this clock.
Well, hurry up, kind of, will you, please?
And so are you. And that was Della Dozer, fine recording star. Thank you again, Della.
Marvelous. Just marvelous, Lieutenant Marjorie Avalier of our own Navy. You're not to be lightly regarded in your quest for the Drill Talent Award. And folks, be with us for our next show, to be held in the 10th Brigadier Armory near Sandifer, Utah. So long. And now, the Crutchford Braid and Tassel Company invites you to share another nostalgic interlude in the lives of the Pittmans.
The Great Depression swept across the land when I was a young boy growing up amid the prairie of Oklahoma. And in many ways, my family suffered more than most, for my father was a simple farmer. In good years, he sometimes harvested 1,000 bushels of dust from the land. But in bad years, the crop often ran to 5,000 bushels or more. Still, there were happy times as well. One day in particular stands out quite vividly in my recollection. I had just received an important letter in the mail, and as I hurried into the house to tell my parents about it, my young heart was racing.
Hey, Ma. Hey, Pa. I just received an important letter in the mail, and my young heart is racing.
Well, now you just lie down on the floor and rest for a little while, Jimmy Joe. The shock of getting that bad news will pass after your mother's made you some bitterroot tea.
Oh, this isn't bad news by a long shot, Pa. It's from that school for creative writers I saw advertised on a matchbook cover. I sent them a sample of my best childish scribbling for their free appraisal, and they say I'm so good that they're offering me a scholarship to take their home study course.
Well, I think that's wonderful, Jimmy Joe. We've always wanted you children to go on to a higher education, even beyond the 6th grade, if we could afford it.
Oh, this is a lot higher than that, Ma. My new school will mail me a diploma suitable for framing once I graduate. And the complete course of 10 lessons only costs $40.
Well, I know you've got your heart set on becoming a famous writer when you grow up, Jimmy Joe, and I sure want you to enroll in this fine school. But why do you have to pay $40 if they're giving you a free scholarship?
Oh, they explain that in the letter, Pa. The money is just to cover the school's cost of handling and mailing. Usually they charge an extra $5 for tuition, but I'm so gifted, they're not making me pay any of that.
Well, it would be a terrible shame to let an opportunity like this go by. But $40 is a lot of money to raise. We might get as much as $15 by selling the truck. But I'm afraid your grandmother would have to go back to work at the lard rendering plant to help scrape up the rest.
Well, I know you promised Grandma she could take things easier now that she's past 90. But this is a real worthy cause. Just listen to this great sample of my writing that I sent to the school, and they praise so highly. Here's how it goes. Come you back to Mandalay, where the old flotilla lay. Can't you hear their paddles clunking from Rangoon to Mandalay? On the road to Mandalay.
Just hold on right there, Jimmy Joe. I'm inclined to wonder about the professors at that school, if this is the poem you sent them to win your scholarship. And I don't want to sell the truck unless I'm sure you'd be getting a first-rate education from teachers with good sense. So, why don't you just throw away that letter you got and then go off to bed, son?
Well, okay, if you're sure that's in my best interest. Good night, Pa. Good night, Ma.
Good night, Jimmy Joe. Good night, Uncle Kermit.
Good night, Roy Boy. Good night, ladies of the Rebecca Lodge.
Good night, baby Lucille. Good night, Grandpa.
Good night, Shirley Temple. Good night, Jane Withers, before she became a lady plumber.
Good night, everybody upstairs. Good night, Jimmy Joe.
Good night, Ma. Good night, Newt Rockney of Notre Dame.
And in the years ahead, I was destined never to receive a diploma suitable for framing. But among the ignorant and unschooled members of my family, I was always treated as an equal.
Good night, Buck Jones. Good night, Bobby Jones.
My brothers and sisters and I remain a closely knit group to this day, even though our old farmhouse is gone, and I've long since lost track of where everybody went.
Good night, wall sockets. Good night, ceiling fixture.
In my memory, we are still together as we were then, and neither the passing of the years nor the endless miles that separate us can ever wipe out those happy recollections of my boyhood.
This week's episode of The Pitmans has been brought to you by the Cretchford Braid and Tassel Company, maker of fine doodads to improve the looks of your shabby home. Perhaps you're dreaming at this very moment of new gold fringe to dress up your souvenir pillow from Yellowstone National Park. Why not make that dream a reality by rushing to your local dealer and shouting, Cretchford? And don't forget to join us again soon for another story of nostalgic warmth in the lives of the Pitmen.